Welcome back to XRP Insider, your number one source for the latest XRP news, Ripple updates, institutional crypto adoption, and the biggest stories shaping the future of digital finance. Today's update is one XRP holders absolutely cannot afford to miss because the market is showing signs of something much bigger building beneath the surface. XRP is currently trading around the $1.41 to $1.42 range as of May 10, 2026. And despite recent market hesitation, the asset continues showing incredible resilience near a critical breakout zone that many analysts have been watching for weeks. What's making this moment so important is that the overall sentiment around XRP has shifted dramatically compared to previous years. Instead of fear and uncertainty dominating the conversation, we are now seeing cautious optimism driven by institutional activity, regulatory clarity, and growing confidence from major financial players. Traders are closely monitoring every move because XRP appears to be coiling tighter and tighter, and historically periods like this often lead to explosive price action. While short-term volatility remains part of the market, the bigger picture for Ripple and XRP suddenly looks more powerful than many expected only a year ago. One of the biggest developments sending shockwaves through the XRP community recently came from UBS, one of the world's largest financial institutions. Reports revealed that UBS disclosed exposure to Ripple through a new SEC filing, and the crypto market reacted almost immediately. Investors interpreted this as another major sign that institutional confidence in Ripple continues growing behind the scenes. This is important because large banks and asset managers rarely move into emerging technologies without conducting years of internal analysis and risk assessments first. When an institution like UBS publicly shows exposure connected to Ripple, it sends a message to the entire market that XRP is no longer being viewed as some speculative outsider asset. Instead, it is increasingly being treated as part of the future infrastructure of global finance. Many XRP supporters believe this could open the door for even more banking giants to follow the same path over the coming months. The market response reflected that excitement, with XRP showing strong buying pressure shortly after the news surfaced. Even though price suppression and broader market uncertainty still exist, developments like this continue strengthening the long-term bullish narrative surrounding Ripple's ecosystem and XRP's potential role within institutional finance. Another major story fueling bullish momentum is Ripple's reported collaboration involving JPMorgan and Mastercard on a historic settlement completed on the XRP Ledger. According to reports circulating across financial media and crypto communities, Ripple successfully integrated XRPL into live institutional banking systems focused on cross-border tokenized treasury settlements. If this transition continues expanding successfully, it could represent one of the most significant milestones in XRP's history. For years, Ripple has pushed the vision of faster, cheaper, and more efficient global payments compared to traditional systems. Now it appears that some of the world's most recognizable financial institutions are actively experimenting with that infrastructure in real-world environments. The involvement of JPMorgan and Mastercard immediately caught the market's attention because these are not small experimental startups. These are financial giants operating at a global scale. Investors see this as evidence that Ripple's technology is finally moving beyond theory and into practical institutional implementation. The excitement surrounding this development has added fresh momentum to XRP discussions online, with many traders believing that large-scale banking adoption could become one of the strongest catalysts for future price growth throughout 2026 and beyond. At the same time, whale activity has become another massive talking point within the XRP ecosystem. On-chain data indicates that wallets holding more than 1 million XRP accumulated over 1.2 billion tokens during the first quarter of 2026 alone. This level of accumulation is incredibly important because whales typically represent high net worth investors, institutions, or strategic market participants with access to extensive research and market intelligence. When these large holders continue buying aggressively during periods of consolidation and price suppression, it often signals strong long-term conviction. Many analysts believe this accumulation phase could be setting the foundation for the next major breakout cycle. Retail investors are watching closely because whale movements have historically preceded significant XRP price rallies. Even though short-term price action may seem frustrating for some traders, the behavior of these large wallets tells a very different story beneath the surface. It suggests that major players may be positioning themselves ahead of larger institutional developments, ETF expansion, and regulatory breakthroughs that could reshape XRP's market structure later this year. The growing gap between retail uncertainty and whale confidence is becoming one of the most fascinating aspects of the current XRP market environment. The ETF momentum surrounding XRP has also transformed dramatically since the asset was officially classified as a commodity earlier this year. That regulatory milestone removed a massive layer of uncertainty that had weighed heavily on XRP for years. Since that classification became official, cumulative spot XRP ETF inflows have reportedly reached approximately $1.44 billion, a number that continues attracting attention from both crypto analysts and traditional investors. ETF inflows matter because they represent sustained institutional demand entering the market through regulated investment vehicles. This allows pension funds, hedge funds, and traditional market participants to gain exposure to XRP without directly managing crypto wallets or navigating blockchain infrastructure themselves. Many experts believe the ETF market could become one of the strongest long-term demand drivers for XRP moving forward. The more capital flowing into these products, the stronger the potential buying pressure becomes across the broader market. Some analysts are already comparing XRP's ETF growth trajectory to what happened with Bitcoin after spot Bitcoin ETFs received approval. While XRP remains at a much earlier stage in that process, the rapid growth in inflows has significantly increased bullish expectations for the remainder of 2026. Of course, one of the biggest reasons investor confidence has improved so dramatically is because the long-running legal battle between Ripple and the SEC has finally concluded. For years, the lawsuit created uncertainty that prevented many institutions from fully embracing XRP, despite Ripple's growing partnerships and technological progress. Now that the case is officially over, the market finally has the clarity it desperately needed. Many XRP holders view this moment as a turning point, not only for Ripple, but for the broader digital asset industry in the United States. The conclusion of the lawsuit effectively removed one of the largest obstacles standing in XRP's path toward mainstream adoption. Analysts believe this clarity could accelerate institutional participation throughout the year as regulatory risk continues decreasing. Even beyond XRP itself, the Ripple case became one of the most closely watched legal battles in crypto history because its outcome carried implications for how digital assets would be regulated in the future. With the case now resolved, Ripple appears positioned to move forward aggressively, focusing entirely on expansion, partnerships, and ecosystem growth, rather than legal defense and uncertainty. Adding even more excitement to the regulatory landscape is the upcoming Clarity Act, which many market participants believe could become one of the most important crypto laws introduced in the United States. Investors and institutions are paying close attention because the legislation is expected to establish a much clearer legal framework for digital assets later this summer. For years, one of the biggest concerns among financial institutions has been the lack of consistent regulatory guidance surrounding cryptocurrencies. The Clarity Act could potentially solve many of those issues by defining how various digital assets should be classified and regulated moving forward. Supporters believe this would encourage broader institutional participation by reducing legal ambiguity and creating a more stable environment for innovation. XRP supporters are especially optimistic because Ripple's business model already aligns closely with regulated financial infrastructure. If the Clarity Act delivers the certainty many expect, analysts believe it could trigger another wave of institutional adoption, not only for Ripple, but for the entire crypto sector. Markets often react strongly to regulatory certainty, and many traders are already positioning themselves ahead of possible announcements expected later this year. Ripple's growing role within the regulated banking system became even more evident after the company received conditional approval for a U.S. National Trust Bank charter from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency back in late 2025. That approval officially became fully operational in April 2026, giving Ripple the ability to offer digital asset custody services within the regulated U.S. banking framework. This is a massive development because custody remains one of the most critical pieces of institutional crypto adoption. Large financial institutions need secure, compliant, and regulated ways to store digital assets before committing significant capital to the market. Ripple entering this space directly strengthens its position as a serious infrastructure provider, rather than simply a crypto company focused only on token speculation. Many investors believe this banking integration could significantly expand Ripple's influence within the financial sector over the coming years. It also reinforces the narrative that Ripple is building a complete ecosystem around blockchain-based financial services. As traditional finance and digital assets continue merging together, Ripple's ability to operate within regulated banking structures may provide a significant competitive advantage compared to many other crypto projects still struggling with compliance uncertainty. From a technical analysis perspective, XRP's chart structure has become increasingly interesting over the past several months. Analysts note that XRP has been coiling within a tightening range for nearly 3 months, creating the type of compression pattern that often precedes major volatility expansions. According to several traders, a clean daily close above the $1.50 level could potentially trigger a breakout rally toward the $1.70 region in the short term. The reason this level matters so much is because it represents a key psychological and technical resistance zone that XRP has struggled to decisively overcome. If buyers manage to push the price above that barrier with strong volume confirmation, momentum traders could quickly enter the market aggressively. At the same time, support around the current consolidation zone remains relatively strong, helping XRP maintain stability despite broader market fluctuations. Some analysts are comparing the current setup to previous XRP breakout structures seen during earlier bull cycles. While no outcome is guaranteed in crypto markets, many traders believe the current technical structure suggests that a significant move may be approaching sooner rather than later. Short-term forecasts for May 2026 remain relatively balanced, with most analysts projecting XRP to trade somewhere between $1.40 and $1.60 if current market conditions remain stable. While some traders were hoping for a faster breakout earlier this spring, many experts argue that the extended consolidation phase may actually be healthier for the long-term structure of the market. Slow accumulation periods often allow stronger foundations to form before larger rallies occur. Investors are also closely watching Bitcoin and broader macroeconomic conditions because overall market sentiment still plays a major role in XRP's short-term direction. However, compared to previous years, XRP now has several independent bullish catalysts supporting its market narrative, including ETF inflows, institutional integration, legal clarity, and banking expansion. This means XRP may gradually become less dependent on speculative hype cycles and more connected to real-world financial adoption. That transition could potentially create a more stable, long-term growth trajectory compared to previous crypto market cycles, driven primarily by retail speculation and social media excitement alone. Looking further ahead, some of the long-term predictions for XRP have become extremely ambitious. Bullish scenarios for the end of 2026 range anywhere from $2.80 all the way to $8, depending on how institutional adoption unfolds and whether regulatory momentum continues accelerating. Of course, these projections remain speculative, and the crypto market is still highly volatile. However, analysts supporting these bullish targets point towards several factors that could drive significant upward momentum over time. Continued ETF inflows, expanded banking integration, real-world utility growth on XRPL, and successful implementation of the Clarity Act are all seen as potential catalysts capable of dramatically increasing demand for XRP. Some investors also believe Ripple's growing presence within tokenized asset settlements and cross-border payment infrastructure could position XRP as one of the leading blockchain assets within institutional finance. While skepticism still exists in certain parts of the market, it is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore how rapidly Ripple's ecosystem has evolved over the past year, compared to many competing projects still struggling to achieve meaningful real-world adoption. What makes this moment especially fascinating is the psychological shift happening within the XRP community itself. For years, XRP holders endured endless uncertainty, legal fears, exchange delistings, and constant skepticism from critics who doubted Ripple's future. Now the tone surrounding XRP feels noticeably different. Instead of defending the project against regulatory attacks, supporters are discussing institutional partnerships, banking licenses, ETF inflows, and real-world implementation. That change in narrative matters because market sentiment often plays a major role in long-term adoption cycles. Investors who previously avoided XRP due to legal concerns are beginning to reconsider their positions now that many of those barriers have disappeared. At the same time, new retail investors are entering the market after seeing major financial institutions publicly associated with Ripple's ecosystem. The combination of improving fundamentals and shifting public perception is creating an environment where XRP's long-term potential is being reevaluated across both crypto and traditional finance communities alike. Another important factor many traders are watching closely is liquidity movement across the broader altcoin market. Historically, XRP has often experienced delayed but explosive rallies during major crypto cycles. Some analysts believe the current market structure resembles earlier accumulation phases, where XRP remained relatively quiet before suddenly accelerating in a short period of time. As institutional participation grows, liquidity conditions within the market may become even more important moving forward. Large funds entering through ETFs or institutional products can create sustained buying pressure that behaves differently from retail-driven hype cycles. This could potentially reduce some volatility while supporting longer-term price appreciation over time. Traders are also monitoring derivatives markets, open interest levels, and exchange inflow data for signs that larger positioning activity may already be underway behind the scenes. While the market remains unpredictable in the short term, the combination of institutional growth and tightening technical structures has many investors convinced that XRP may be entering one of the most important phases in its history. Social media activity around XRP has also exploded recently, with discussions trending across crypto communities as investors debate whether the current consolidation period represents the calm before a major breakout. Influencers, analysts, and traders continue sharing bullish scenarios tied to Ripple's institutional expansion and growing regulatory clarity. Of course, not everyone agrees on the timeline, and some analysts still warn that broader macroeconomic pressures could delay significant price appreciation temporarily. However, even many cautious traders acknowledge that XRP's fundamental position appears stronger today than it has in many years. The fact that Ripple continues securing partnerships and regulatory approvals while expanding its institutional footprint gives the project a level of credibility that few crypto companies currently possess. This ongoing momentum is helping XRP remain one of the most closely watched digital assets heading deeper into the second half of 2026. At the same time, investors should remember that crypto markets remain highly volatile and unpredictable despite bullish developments. Sharp corrections, sudden news events, and broader market sentiment shifts can impact prices rapidly. That's why many experienced investors continue emphasizing the importance of risk management and long-term strategy rather than emotional short-term trading decisions. While the bullish case for XRP has strengthened considerably this year, markets never move in straight lines. Healthy pullbacks and consolidation phases are still normal, even within strong uptrends. Many analysts believe patience may become one of the most important factors for investors navigating the next stage of XRP's journey. The market appears to be transitioning into a period where fundamentals and institutional adoption matter more than hype alone, and that could create a very different environment compared to previous crypto cycles driven primarily by speculation. As we move deeper into 2026, all eyes remain focused on whether XRP can finally break through the key resistance levels that have limited price momentum for months. If Ripple continues expanding its institutional partnerships, while ETF inflows remain strong and regulatory clarity improves further, many analysts believe XRP could eventually enter a completely new phase of market valuation. Whether that happens next month or later this year remains uncertain, but what is clear is that Ripple and XRP are no longer operating on the sidelines of the financial world. They are increasingly becoming part of mainstream institutional conversations about the future of global payments, digital assets, and tokenized finance. That shift alone marks one of the most important transformations in XRP's history and explains why so many investors are watching the current market setup so closely right now. Thank you for watching XRP Insider. If you enjoyed today's update, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay locked in because the XRP market is moving fast, and the biggest developments may still be ahead. Let us know down in the comments whether you think XRP breaks above $1.50 soon, or if you believe an even bigger move is coming later this year. As always, remember this video is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and should not be considered financial advice. Always do your own research before making investment decisions, and we'll see you in the next update.